are live. Hello and welcome to the Benefit of a Doud podcast. I'm your host, Adam Doud, and joining me, as always, is Cliff Thomas. Cliff, how you doing this evening?
Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, 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 indeed. Today is Christmas Day, which is to say that Christmas Day is the day that this episode will be going live, not the day we are recording it, and it's very possible that it's not the day that you're watching it, but we're suspending disbelief, so just go with it, huh? All right. Anyway, in the spirit of the holidays, we are going to give back to the podcast community. And we are going to actually the podcast and the YouTube community upon which this podcast is built. Cliff and I consume podcasts and YouTube relentlessly. So we wanted to share with you some of the shows that keep us entertained. There will be a link in the show notes and in the description below. So please feel free to click on any of them to give them a listen. Now, because this is the first of hopefully many annual traditions that we'll be doing this, we're going to start off with our standby podcast, the ones that we do, listen to religiously in YouTube shows as well, the ones that we do all the time. Then we'll move into some of the other shows that we listen to semi-regularly, and in the years to come, I think we'll just, probably just do that, the new stuff that we find out, that we'll dedicate most of the show to new shows that we come across during that calendar year. So without further ado, we should go ahead and dive in. So Cliff, do you want to get us started, or should I get the ball rolling?
You've been talking for such a long time. I need to exercise my vocal cords, so That's
go first. That's what I'm thinking. Let's do it.
So I'm thinking maybe you and I start off with the audio podcast that we listen to. Does that sound like a good idea? And then I'll hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Right. So do we want to do all of them, or do we want to do them like categorized?
So I don't have mine categorized. So
all right, let's do all of them. Okay.
my list is a lot shorter than yours anyway. So
that's fine.
I subscribe to a ton of podcasts, and it's not like you're saying. We have some that we listen to regularly, some that are what I think you described as filler.
Well, yeah, I'll explain that, but yeah.
I understand what you mean. And there's the limited series, or the ones that, yeah. So I've got 4 that I listen to on a regular basis, and that's the ones that I put here. So I have a feeling we're going to have some crossover here, at least for one.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
So the first one, this is one of the probably the mobile technology and technology podcasts that I listen to the most, and that is Mobile Tech Podcast with Myriam Joire,
friend of the show, Myriam.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So I also listen to, in fact, I would say probably half of my podcasts that I have listed are part of the Ringer network, which is now owned by Spotify, and specifically NBA basketball, right? So one of those is the Bill Simmons podcast. Now he does more than just NBA content. He does sports content, mostly NBA, NFL, and a little bit of golf. Talks about sports betting, and then he also does interviews with actors and things like that. So it's a pretty broad ranging podcast.
Yeah, no kidding.
And depending on the time of the year, I mean, he has some pretty interesting stuff. So, but I listen to him mostly for the basketball content, and also part of the Ringer podcast network is the Ringer NBA podcast, which actually has like 3 different named podcasts on that same feed. And then the Mismatch, which is also part of that, but has its own feed. The Mismatch is probably my favorite. It's Kevin O'Connor and Chris, whose last name I can't think of, but Chris Vernon. There we go. Chris Vernon. Vernon is from Memphis and is a color commentator for is part of the Memphis Grizzlies basketball network, and I know he does content for them as well as I think University of Memphis. But anyway, I love their podcast. I think they've got a good chemistry, I think, in bantering and things like that, kind of similar to you and me. So that's a lot of fun. And then lastly, the Phones Show Chat, which their host has also been, I believe, a guest on this show, maybe in the first season when you had their host on talking about phone camera comparisons.
Yes, Litchfield.
Yeah, Steve Litchfield. That's right.
Got you. Okay, yeah. Okay.
So it is a very British show, and in the best way. I really enjoy listening to him.
Too. That thing's been on forever.
It has. It was kind of like the one that oh gosh, what's the Matthew Miller, and I
Mm,
can't think of the other guy's name, but they had it. They had a mobile technology podcast that ran for over 10 years. So yeah, but the phone show chat has been around for a long time. So
okay.
those are the podcasts that I listen to primarily.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So okay, and my this is so bad. You won't actually find a tech podcast in my regular rotation, which is kind of weird. I've relegated most of the tech podcasts to the filler shows, and
Sure.
I'll explain what I mean by that. But my two regular podcasts that I listen to every episode without fail, hell or high water, is the Stuff You Should Know podcast, and I've been listening to that podcast for
It's a
years.
great
I mean,
podcast.
it's yeah, and you know what the thing is? It's so evergreen. You can listen to any episode at any
Hmm.
time, and it doesn't matter. And that is like, honestly, that's the chef's kiss of podcasting. Like, if you can find something that's evergreen that isn't dependent on like the news that's happening right now, oh, it's
And they will actually go
wonderful.
on like a a 1 or 2 episode sometimes break, and they have so much content in their library
Yeah,
because they that show's been running for such a long time that
they're over a
they'll
thousand shows.
yeah, so they'll bring something back from the archives, and it's
Yeah,
usually still something I haven't heard or something that I very
yeah.
vaguely recall listening to before. So
Yeah. Now, I usually, what you're talking about is Stuff You Should Know selects, which I usually skip because there's actually about a 50-50 chance I've already listened to it,
yeah.
like when it originally aired. So actually, I just re listened to Nostradamus, their episode about Nostradamus. So
Hmm.
I'm listening to that right now. But then the other one is This American Life, which is, again, it's an ancient show. It's been going on for freaking ever. They're over 800 episodes themselves at this point.
Really, since before podcasts, actually, when it was
Yeah,
just a
I mean,
radio
well,
show.
it's
Hmm.
NPR, yeah.
Hmm.
So, but I've been listening to that one for probably 3 years, something like that, 3-4 years, something like that. It was kind of a late bloomer. But it's the same people that do like Serial and stuff
Hmm.
like that. So, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But anyway, so that's like, now this Stuff You Should Know puts out 4 episodes per week, including a short stuff, which is like 15 minutes or less, and their Stuff You Should Know selects. So I usually skip select. So it's usually like 3 shows. And then This American Life is 1 show a week. So sometimes I will get caught up. It happens every now and then. And so then I have what I call the filler shows. Like, these are the shows that I'll listen to once every so often, every couple of weeks. Like, it's not, it's not guaranteed I will catch it every single week, but that's shows like Android Central, All About Android, Android Police, the Mobile Tech Podcast from Myriam Joire, the Geared Up Podcast with John Rettinger and Andrew Edwards,
Well,
which is
that's a
fun.
relatively new one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been actually, it's been a while since I've listened to it. I'm not even sure if it's still going. But anyway, Two Girls One podcast. We had
Friend of the show.
friend of the show. We had I'm completely blanking on her name right now. Oh my god. What
I
the
can't
hell?
help you there.
I know. Allie Goldberg. God, I would have felt terrible because I was like just in their Discord earlier today.
Just dub it in later, Ale Goldberg.
So, and then what I like to do is every now and then I like a palate cleanser. Like, I've been listening to Stuff You Should Know all the time and This American Life all the time. So what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll actively look for limited series podcasts. And the limited series podcast is a show that'll be like 8 episodes. Like, from start to finish, it will tell a complete story arc from the first to the last. It's not an ongoing series. It's not like a topical news thing. And I listened to just about. Oh, and I just realized there's one that's not on here, and I don't remember the name of it. But a lot of the Serial podcast, which, by the way, hasn't had a new episode in like 3 years now, but they have a whole staff of Serial productions, and they do other shows. Like Nice White Parents, which is about school integration and what happens when white parents get involved with that. Spoiler alert, it's usually not a good thing. The Improvement Association, which was about voting fraud in a county in Alabama, I think it was. So those are like two of the Serial productions. And then there's one that I really enjoy and I wish they would make more of. but it's a podcast called Finding Drago, which is about two comedians that team up, two Australian comedians that team up to try to find the original author of a book, a sequel to Rocky 3
What?
about Ivan Drago and what happened after his match with Rocky.
So did it get published or was it just fan fiction?
You need to listen to the show, to
Okay.
the podcast. It's called Finding Drago. It's kind of amazing, but it's not my best podcast of the year. The best podcast of the year is equally wacky. It's called Winds of Change. And it's about a reporter who hears a rumor that the song Winds of Change by the Scorpions was actually written by the CIA in order to harbor the fall of the Soviet Union.
Wow.
It's amazing. It is an amazing podcast. So I know I just
question then, like,
yeah.
when you for some of these that are I wouldn't call them obscure, especially from the serial ones, but how are you finding out about some of these podcasts? Is it recommendations? Are you just scrolling? Is it friends? Like,
it's a little of everything. Usually what I'll start by doing is asking on Twitter, like, hey, who has a good, podcast that I could listen to,
always
like
a
a
good
limited
place to
series.
ask.
And if that doesn't yield anything, usually what I'll do is I will do a search for like podcast awards and see who's won the best limited series, and there's usually runners up and stuff like that. That's how I found Winds of Change. And then like Nice White Parents, Will Be Wild, and I think Finding Drago I heard as ads on other podcasts that I was listening to.
Sometimes those actually work out really well.
Yeah, they do. They really do. So, and like I said, I know I rattled off a whole bunch there, but like, I want to say like the regular shows and the filler shows, everyone's probably already pretty familiar with. But again, there's
Right.
going to be links to all these in the show notes. So if you want to check any of these out, I highly recommend them. But Winds of Change was like the best podcast I listened to this year, and it's amazing. Finding Drago's a close second.
Those both sound really interesting. Yeah, I might have to give those a listen.
Yeah, and like the nice thing about a limited series is you listen to it once through. It's like 8 to 10 hours of your life, and that's it. Like you're
Oh,
done.
it's like reading a book.
And you get a great story. It's
Mhm.
it's really great. I really dig it. So, but I haven't been listening to as many podcasts as I usually used to because I'm not commuting anymore,
Right.
and I'm not really driving anywhere. Like I listen to podcasts while I drive my kids to school and go to the store, and that's about it. So, my morning routine actually involves a full slate of YouTube creators. And since I've been talking for a long time, let's throw it back to Cliff and we can talk about some of his YouTube people, and then we'll get into my YouTube people.
Yeah, I honestly, especially now, I subscribe to YouTube TV for the longest time, and various other ones, whether it's Sling, but I just got to the point where my wife and I had a discussion in between, like a Hulu or some of the other, like a Paramount Plus. We really had the shows that we watched regularly covered by those, and so I'm like, why am I paying $65 or $70 for YouTube TV as much as I miss it every once in a while, right? And it was such a great app. So I really now I think I watch more YouTube series than anything, or and they really are like podcasts to me because the majority of the podcasts that I listen to are recurring podcast more than like the limited series that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so these are a couple of these are ones that I watched with my wife, and then some of these are ones that are more of just me. But the two that I think I watched the most, and these are the ones that I watched with my wife. This is just when I'm done with my work, we come in and we plop down on the sofa and the chairs, and we turn this on. So the first one of these actually made it to like SNL and the news because of some drama that happened with it. But it's the Try Guys, and these are guys that started sort of a sub thing on the BuzzFeed network. So these guys are all from BuzzFeed. Some of them knew each other during college, and I'm not sure how they all got together, but they make a lot of it's like wacky food-based contests. Like they have a series called Without a Recipe, where they all do almost like a Food Network style thing, kind of almost like Chopped, except it's just like, okay, make cinnamon buns, but you have to make them without a recipe. And then they have
Oh,
judges who taste them, and sometimes it's really funny.
interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, they have a ton of different things. Like they have a eat the menu. Yeah, it's really good content, and um, I know that they're on hiatus right now, but they're supposed to kind of make more adult oriented stuff. Because, well, I mean, that podcast is very child friendly or family friendly for the most part. In fact, both of these
Mhm.
are. The second one of those is Good Mythical Morning, who I think won the Streamy Podcast of the Year or
Oh,
YouTube
cool.
uh, series of the year. And these guys that started this, I think this was their 10th season, and they're my age and actually, like me, grew up in North Carolina. Um, I've lived in other places, but a lot of my teens were spent there. So graduated high school at the same time as me, graduated from NC State, and then just started making content. And we're sort of one of those
Neat.
early YouTube channels. And I really, it's again, just different things depending on episodes, but they have kind of like another podcast or a YouTube series that you and I watch together. They have a lot of hot ones,
Yeah.
which I'll mention, right? They have a lot of celebrity guests and things like that. So it almost reminds me, it's kind of like a replacement for like the Tonight Show or something. They
Oh,
have
cool.
something different
Okay.
every day, and then they have a podcast. They have some additional, like their kitchen that creates some of the crazy food that they eat has its own YouTube channel and podcast. So it's a
Okay.
lot. There's a lot of content surrounding it, and they make really good stuff. So I highly recommend it. You'll get some laughs, and again, it's safe to watch with the family because there's
Cool.
no yeah. Now I'm moving down to my tech, what I guess I'd call my tech
Okay.
section, and so the Mr. Mobile. That's probably Michael Fisher's content is probably the one that I watch the most for tech reviews. I really, not only
Arguably.
do I
Yeah.
really trust his opinion on things, but he's also a friend of the show and a super great guy, and he's just very entertaining. Like I really like the style of his podcast or his content. So
I like the narratives that he builds too. Yeah.
it's so well produced.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, this is LGR or Lazy Game Reviews, and it sounds like he'd be doing game reviews, but really, his channel is more about retro computing, retro gaming. He gets a lot of stuff sent to him actually, because this is I think another YouTube channel that's been around for a long time. So he'll
Cool.
do things like he'll go to Goodwill and scan the tech shelves for just like old box games and old
Hmm.
computer hardware, and then he'll have he'll do things like buy one of those pallets of just miscellaneous tech to see if he can find some goodies. But it's
Hmm.
mostly like he'll rebuild a Mac from 1987, or it's more PC stuff. He has he has shelves full of crazy mice, like computer mice, like a hamburger, or I'm sure you remember those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Probably.
entertaining, and he has a very nerdy demeanor, and it really fits with the style of the podcast. So
Nice.
I even like his graphic style. It's very like 8-bit lettering and stuff like that. It
Yeah,
totally works
especially if
with
he's
what he
retro,
does.
that makes sense.
Exactly. Now, in a lot of the content that I watch on YouTube is automotive stuff,
Hmm.
which we don't talk too much about on the podcast unless it's like
There's a good reason
electric.
for it.
So my favorite automotive channel right now is Monroe Live. So this guy that started
Yeah.
the channel has a business. His name is Sandy Monroe, and his business is actually reverse engineering vehicles and then giving like a, um, a chance for other like competition to that vehicle to get a chance to come in and check, and he'll give like an evaluation of the vehicle. But
Hmm.
he's really gotten into electric vehicles specifically.
Okay.
He interviewed Elon Musk 2 years ago, which was really interesting. But they'll do things like take the vehicles apart, show you what the batteries look like, talk about the fabrication of like the dashboards and how he thinks that they could be improved. And he has a whole crew that's also involved with this. So he
Hmm.
employs a lot of people outside of just doing the I think I almost feel like people have been so interested in the content that it's just grown the channel over the past few years. And yeah, so if you're really nerdy about electric cars, if you want to learn some stuff, I mean, they also do electric vehicle reviews and things like that. But like he just drove or just rode in, I'm sorry, and had a uh, an I guess you could call it interview, like a back and forth with the president or the CEO of Canoe, which is another up and coming electric vehicle manufacturer in the vein of like Rivian or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So again, very interesting. Highly recommend the channel, especially if you're really interested in more of like the engineering side of electric vehicles. The next one is Drive Tribe, which was founded by the three guys from Top Gear that left and started doing Amazon content. So James May, Richard Hammond, and why can I not remember his name? But very entertaining again, and they have a whole crew of people that create content outside of what those three guys do. In fact, those three guys aren't that involved in it on like a day-to-day basis. But if you like British humor, if you like some content that goes between technical and humor, then I think you'll really enjoy that, especially if you liked Top Gear back in the day. The next one is Auto Alex, which is another British guy who until recently was part of another automotive channel, and he left to start doing his own thing. And it's very similar content, like thematically, to Drive Tribe, but he does things like goes to auto auctions and buys. It's like, okay, I have $3,000. What can I get? I'm looking for this kind of vehicle for this price, and then how bad is it? Can I drive it home? That kind of thing. That's like probably not doing justice to his channel and his content, but it's very entertaining because he's a lot of fun. And then because Britain's really not that big of a country, obviously, that there's actually interactions with some of the other automotive YouTube channels like Drive Tribe.
Okay.
And then I do enjoy watching Jay Leno's Garage. If you don't know what that is, it's Jay Leno driving. Sometimes it's vintage vehicles, sometimes it's brand new vehicles, where they'll sometimes even have like the CEO of Ford Motor Company or someone come and talk about it, like the Ford Lightning truck. He did that recently. And then he has an amazing garage as far as actually working on vehicles, and a lot of the older stuff. Like he has Stanley Steamers and cars from the 1910s and 1920s, and he has a steam powered workshop.
Okay.
With rescued machining tools and things like that from that era, like from the Industrial Revolution area.
Wow.
Steam powered. It's pretty cool. I mean, the guy has millions of dollars and has made some very smart investments. So his stuff is really interesting. And then I'll talk about these last two. This is sort of my guilty pleasure. I somehow just watch, and you know how this goes. You'll get something recommended to you on YouTube, and then that something else gets recommended to you because you watched that. And so I somehow fell into watching Grand Theft Auto 5 videos, but specifically ones that are humorous. There are some mods that you can download. One's called the Chaos mod, which makes just crazy things happen, like in the inversion of gravity or teleporting, or it's just all sorts of wacky things. And so it'll be Matt is the guy's name, but his I think Dark Viper AU must be like his
gamer tag.
His gamer tag, exactly. Yeah. Which he started out on Twitch, and then he was just randomly reposting to his YouTube channel, but he's actually started doing more YouTube live streaming, which has been interesting. But hilarious. He's got a very dry sense of humor. He's Australian, if you can't figure that out by the AU. And
I thought he was just gold.
Oh, that could also work. In fact, he made a joke about that yesterday in one of the streams I was watching. But
okay,
and that's a channel that I get belly laughs out of. Like and it's sad because I want to share it with people, but I mean it's hard to find other people that will find it funny because it's so niche.
Yeah.
And then there's Call Me Kevin, who also does a little bit of Grand Theft Auto 5 streaming with the Chaos mod and some of the other mods, but Does a lot of sometimes he plays vintage games, sometimes he plays new content. He's a very nice, likable guy. He has a very Simpsons writer sense of humor and makes a lot of
Hmm.
references to shows like that. But his content is really enjoyable, and I think even if you're not really into gaming and things like that, you could find things to like with Call Me Kevin. So those are the ones that I watch. I'm sure there's some others. I do watch a lot of basketball content and things like that too, but just nothing really worth recommending on the show, I think.
Gotcha. All right. Well, no, that's a fairly substantial list, and there will be links to all of these in the show
Right.
notes and in the description below. So, by all means, please do click on them and enjoy them as we do. Okay, so for my YouTube stuff, my YouTube is primarily in the morning. It's actually like part of my morning routine. For whatever reason, I'll usually start watching YouTube, and it's usually because one of the first people that I watch on in the morning is Stephen Colbert. Because he takes the segments from a TV show and puts them on YouTube.
Right.
So since I don't have broadcast TV, I have Paramount Plus. I could just watch it on that, but I usually just go to the YouTube instead for whatever reason. Because from there I could go out and watch content from all these other and I have a fairly extensive list. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible.
Now,
But
how are you consuming it? Are you watching it on your phone? Because I watch mine
tablet.
actually on I watch mine on my TV
Oh, okay.
most of the time, which is just that's why it's been such a weird transition for me with YouTube being the content that I watch. I rarely watch on my mobile device.
Yeah. So, you remember that 13-inch Lenovo tablet that I did a
Yes.
video on that doubles as a second screen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that thing pretty much lives on my kitchen table.
Gotcha.
So it's what my wife and I watch on while we eat dinner. It's what I watch on in the morning while I eat breakfast. So yeah, that's what I watch on for the most part. So I'll watch Stephen Colbert when he's new. Oh, and also John Oliver on
Mm-hmm.
Mondays because Stephen Colbert doesn't go over the weekends, and John Oliver never makes new episodes. What the hell, Jo? Like he's off until February now. I'm kind of irritated. But anyway, so after Stephen Colbert is over, now I can go into the regular. These are all basically fillers because none of them really do daily videos.
Right.
So it's like when they post, I will watch them. So, Mr. Mobile, we already covered. The other related tech content that I watch is usually Dave Kogan, the Unlocker,
Mm.
especially his real world tests. I love those. And I'm so insanely jealous that he came up with that concept before I did.
It
But
is really good,
oh man,
especially when he does the road trip real world ones where you actually
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
travel
yeah.
content plus, which is really cool.
Exactly. So, and then the other stuff that I fill in with Steve Shives. I know I've sent a few of his videos to you. He is a Star Trek guy,
Oh,
and he has this encyclopedic knowledge of Star Trek that you can ask him really any question about any Star Trek episode and he'll be able to recite it off the top of his head. And he does a monthly Trek Actually series where he'll say, the reason I got started with him was I think Captain Jellicoe is actually pretty awesome. Or
I
um,
disagree.
did Captain Archer actually commit genocide in very stuff like that. So and that's a monthly thing. And then I'm gonna kind of get the sporadic ones out of the way first. Um, so also included that would be in Dorktown, which is Secret Base, which is SB Nation's YouTube channel. They renamed it to
Oh,
Secret Base for some reason. But Dorktown, it stars John Boyce and Alex Rubenstein. I would listen to John Boyce read a phone book. Uh, his narrative style of reading a script is just it's unparalleled. I mean, he's really, really super good at what he does. Alex Rubenstein, not as much. But John Boyce. And they will do they're status journalists, they're stats journalists, okay, which means a lot of their reporting would be this is every punt in the NFL in the in the new ball era, and this is how far each punt went and how far it was returned. And then like this lonely guy up here, this is the punt that we're going to talk about here because this is just amazing.
If I
Stuff like that.
remember right, this is the podcast that has really cool infographics where it's like on a flat plane and then it
Yeah,
extends out. Yeah, you sent me some of those. I really,
it
yeah,
used
that's good stuff. Yeah.
it used to be called Shark Party. And now it's called, and then it was also called Pretty Good, which I don't know if I've sent you this one, but he did an episode of Pretty Good about the TV show 24. I need to send that to you because it's pretty amazing. But anyway, now it's called Dorktown,
And
and they'll do
analytics are really interesting. And
it
if you
is,
can,
and yeah, and if you can get into it, so like they just did they just did a show called The People I Pay to Wear Shorts, which is about Michael Jordan owning the Charlotte Bobcats.
oh,
Um, and
he's such a bad owner.
that
So bad.
specific year, which I believe was the 2012 Bobcats, that were like literally the worst team in
Worst
NBA
team.
history.
They had like 12
So
wins.
yeah, so they were talking about that. Okay, and then like more regular content, we got Hot Ones that comes out every Thursday. You already talked
Yes.
about them. They eat hot wings and they get progressively hotter. I'll usually watch them if I know the guest and if I'm interested in the guest. Usually, if I'm not, I'll usually skip it. But
I'm the same way. Yeah.
and then let's see, Ali Spagnola, who is she's hilarious and she does basically outrageous stuff. And what by outrageous stuff I mean she'll cover her car in AstroTurf, and she will line one of the rooms in her apartment with fur and stuff like that. And it's just the craziest stuff that you can think of, and it's hilarious and it's kind of heartwarming.
And if I remember right, she created one of the original ringtones for Android.
Yes, yes. The reason I discovered her was because Michael Fisher
Fisher.
interviewed her on the Pocket Now Weekly. So that's how I kind of came across her,
Me
which is
too.
kind of fun. And speaking of podcasts that led me to YouTube channels, Tom Scott is a British, I guess you could call him a scientist, I guess. He does a series. He's young. He's younger than you and me. He does a series of videos called Things You Might Not Know. And what he does is he travels all over the world and finds, or he also does some interesting places. He has a series called Interesting Places. And basically, he'll just find these really kind of obscure, interesting locations where, like for example, I think it was Lake Geneva, where I just vacationed this past weekend. They have a mailboat that delivers the mail every day, and they deliver the mail by having teenagers jump off the boat, run down the dock, stick the mail in the post office box, and jump back on the boat while it's still in motion.
Nice.
And so he just finds weird stuff like that and says like, and explains why it's interesting. And the thing I like about his videos is they're 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, maybe sometimes 5 minutes if it's a really in-depth topic. I mean, it's just so it's very snackable, and you could just like bang out like 10 of them,
right?
in a while
Could
you
almost
eat a
be
bowl of
YouTube
cereal.
Shorts.
It's almost 2 YouTube Shorts. But God, there are so many other YouTube channels that I watch.
Yes.
Adam Savage is Tested. He does like one day builds where he'll build like something over the course of a day, and he'll like you can watch his journey as he builds all this stuff. But usually I like listening to his fan mail segments because they'll ask a lot of questions about Mythbusters, and I was a big fan of the show Mythbusters.
He had a few videos that showed up in my feed in the last like month where he was at an like a Christie's or something like that, and they were auctioning off movie props.
Yeah.
That was so interesting, and I didn't realize Adam Savage used to make toys.
Oh yeah, I might have known that.
Or do prototypes for toys, and then he also made movie props.
Yeah, he would do that, and he worked for ILM for the longest time. So, people will write in and ask him about his time at ILM, or they'll ask him about being a maker or being a creator. And I consider myself a creator, so I can usually, glean some maybe not direct tips from him, but like, suggestions that I could apply to my own workflow. Not to mention I like to tinker in my garage too, so it's kind of fun like that. But honestly, I just feel like we've been talking about this for so long. And again, future editions of this will be shorter because we'll probably be talking about like new stuff that we haven't already talked about, like podcasts that we discover throughout the year. But I'm just going to go ahead and run down the list of the ones I haven't talked about. Frog Leap Studios does metal covers of songs like Let It Go from Frozen and stuff like that. Dorktown I already talked about. Smarter Every Day is an engineer from Alabama who just goes and learns stuff from physics and like teaches stuff from physics. And, he says, farmers are probably the smartest people in the world because they need to do like all this complicated math, like in their heads every day. Pitch Meetings. I don't know if you've ever watched Pitch Meetings. The guy, he plays two different versions of himself. He's like, "You got a movie for me?" "Yes, sir, I do."
Yes,
And
I've seen them.
So, so those are fun. Cinema Sins, same basic concept, but they'll take like, things in movies that like don't make sense and like point them out. And then finally, How Ridiculous, which is three guys from Australia who they used to be kind of pigeonholed into like dropping stuff from high places and like filming it when it lands. But they do a lot of other fun stuff. Like they do a lot of trick shots and stuff. Oh, I forgot. I totally forgot about Dude Perfect. Anyway, they do like trick shots and like they'll do, a basketball shot from the top of a 45-meter dam and stuff like that. But they also do like, races over, like, you have a like a sword and you have to like pop a string of balloons, or you have a chainsaw and you have to like chainsaw through like board. They do ridiculous stuff.
It's basically trick shot Jackass. Without the injuries and stuff.
Without the injuries, without getting hurt. But it's just they do fun. They like did 100 different ways to use a hammer. And like it was just funny. It was one of the funniest videos they've ever done. But and so like as I'm sitting there in the morning, I'll watch Stephen Colbert, and then YouTube will feed me the rest of these creators, and I'll just watch pretty much what jumps to mind. So that's my list. I mean, that's everybody. I mean, and so like in the future, again, this is the holiday season, so we wanted to, give back. I seriously doubt anybody listening to this podcast needs me to tell them who Mr. Mobile is, but
or Hot Ones,
or
Stephen Colbert,
Stephen Colbert. But still, we wanted to, give back and like, talk about why we enjoyed this stuff. And I had a Christmas sweater to wear, and Cliff had a Christmas sweater to wear, so we're wearing them. And it's Christmas, and I hope everybody is enjoying whatever holiday they happen to celebrate, whether it's in the past, in the future, or now. Just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. And normally I'd close out a show by like listing all the different ways that you can follow me. I'm not going to do that. Follow them. Links are in the description below. Cliff, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next video. Well, that time it almost worked.